Welcome to Hennett Minutes. I'm Greg Hennett. Today's talk is titled, Don't Abandon God's Protection. Our text is Job 1, verse 10. Now, Satan is speaking here, speaking to God about the man Job. He was righteous. And Satan said, Have not you placed a hedge about him and his house and all that he has on every side? What was this hedge? I believe clearly it was an angelic protection around this man Job and everything that he had. Angels are standing wing to wing to protect him, his children, their houses, and all their possessions. Now, in this case, this hedge was removed temporarily to test Job. It was a very special test, one that also became a deep instruction to us. Now, but we can remove the hedge around our lives by disobedience. When we disobey God, we have a gap in our armor. We come out from under the protecting wings of the heavenly eagle as described in Psalm 91. And we come out from under the hedge that we have. A breach is made in our hedge, and Satan can have at us. Well, we have three examples of this: Jacob, David, and Jonah. Jacob lived, the book of Genesis tells us, in Syria for many years, and God called him home to Bethel, the house of God, where Jacob first met God. And so in coming back, he obeyed the Lord, but partially, and he stopped short at a place called Sukkoth. There he settled down, and he had apparently no intention to go all the way back to Bethel. Well, during this time, his daughter Dinah went into the nearby city of Shechem, and she was raped. Jacob's sons then, in a rage, killed all the men of Shechem. It was a terrible mass murder. This was the lowest moment in Jacob's life. Now then with David. David was tested for years, he and his men, having to flee in the Judean wilderness because Saul and his men were chasing them to kill them day and night. It was a terrible time. It was constant trouble or fear or need. David also often had to beg for food. And during this time, David just became discouraged, and his faith lapsed, and he said, I'm just going to go over to the land of the Philistines. There's nothing better for me than to do that. If I stay here, Saul will kill me. So he left the place God had put him in, Israel, and he went to the land of the Philistines. Stayed there for 16 months, and at the end of that time, the Amalekites swooped through, and they destroyed the city of Ziklag, where David and his men lived, and took their wives and children. David's men were ready to turn on him. It was the lowest moment in David's life, and it never need to have happened. Did not have to happen if David had been in the will of God. Then Jonah. We know Jonah was called to go to Nineveh and preach to that very wicked city, but he didn't like the Ninevites. He despised them. He hated them. And so he went in another direction. He went to Tarshish. There a great storm overtook him. You know the story. And he had to be thrown into the sea. He was swallowed by a fish and was there for 3 days before he repented. It was the lowest moment in Jonah's life, and he didn't need to be in that condition had he obeyed the call of God. So what does this mean to you and I? Disobedience to God's word or his call or his guidance removes our divine protection. There's a gap in our armor. There is a breach in the hedge about our life and our loved ones. And we come out from under the almighty wings of the heavenly eagle. And Satan can have at us. Why? Because we're of his spirit for a period. What do I mean by that? Partial obedience is rebellion in God's sight. Why? Because we've obeyed part of what God said, just like Jacob did. He came toward Bethel, but we've rebelled against part of what God said, just like Jacob did. He didn't go all the way back. Now, by virtue of this rebellion, we give ourselves under the dominion. We take ourselves under the dominion of Satan, the arch rebel, and he doesn't waste time in having at us to try to trouble us, to try to trouble our family, or to try to harm us. So this is a most serious issue. And I say to you in closing, don't abandon God's protection.